Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
Soldierfield10.com. Tomorrow, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, retired general, and Ukrainians who've lost limbs in battle will be running at Soldier Field tomorrow morning.
Little Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine Bank.
I was looking at a post that Joe put up recently, and if you're frustrated with rush hour traffic right now, think about this. This is what Joseph wrote. Did you know in Russia, people calmly sit in their cars in traffic while roadside launchers send missiles that kill men, women, and children in Kharkiv, just a few miles over the border? Can't imagine that. Lately, for the first time in a couple of years, we've been having communications problems with Joseph, and it's pretty miraculous when you think about that. It's only happened a couple of times. But then just today, I was reading about how Starlink has which has been not only a great aid, I think, to people like Joseph Lindsley, but also to people, to soldiers in the field. And there's a story this morning about this. Let me read it to you. Just before Russian troops pushed across the Ukrainian northern border this month, members of Ukraine's 92nd Assault Brigade lost a vital resource, Starlink satellite internal service, which soldiers use to communicate, collect intelligence, and conduct drone attacks, had slowed to a crawl. Operated by Elon Musk's SpaceX, Starlink has been critical to the Ukrainian military since the earliest days of the war with Russia. And without the full service, Ukrainian soldiers say they cannot quickly communicate and share information about the surprise onslaught, and they have resorted to sending text messages. So we're still trying to establish our communications with Joe. No, I believe you're there right now. We were talking about not only your post, which was pretty frightening, Joseph, about how people driving, next to missile launchers on a daily basis, but also what's happening with Starlink. What's the situation there today?
Launchers. That's in Russia. Can you hear me clearly?
Right. Yes. I want to clear that up too. Right. What we were talking about is, can you imagine like the Russians going to work and then they're just driving alongside these launchers that are attacking Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and they're protected because still we have the situation where, and this is, I think it's getting louder. It's becoming a bigger and bigger debate in Washington. Will the United States give Ukraine permission to hit those missile launchers with American tools? We talk about connectivity problems. I mean, we've seen that here the past few days, even here in Western Ukraine. The infrastructure is so greatly weakened because of these, months, really two intense months of Russian infrastructure attacks upon Ukraine. Many people have blackouts pretty often, especially in the evenings. It's bad. It's difficult. And it's, in some ways I speak as a canary in the coal mine. I'm here every day. I feel it, just how close to sort of near apocalypse things can be sometimes. That said, first, there's some positive news. These ATACMS that the United States did send after that bipartisan support for Ukraine, Ukraine does have permission to use these long-range weapons to hit Russians on occupied Ukrainian territory. And Ukrainians are using these weapons are incredible. And Ukrainians are using them very well, very precisely. In the past couple of days, they've been able to take out several Russian missile launchers in occupied Donbass, so in what is sovereign Ukrainian territory. They're able to hit Russian air defense and Russian missile launchers. So and I've seen videos of these American ATACMS in work. They're incredibly effective, and they could be effective at stopping some of these attacks from over the border if that permission arrives. The Starlink question is also interesting. I mean, there are a few times where I've only been able to communicate with you and the WGN audience through Starlink. But you think of how much more vital it is for the soldiers trying to communicate. There have been times in the past months where Ukraine was trying to attack Russian Navy in the Black Sea, where they've had great success. And Starlink cut off their access, saying that they couldn't use it for that purpose. But we never hear such stories about Starlink restrictions on the Russians. So that's an interesting question. Are there ever Starlink restrictions on the Russians? We don't really hear that. More and more information about is sort of being revealed about what happened yesterday in Kharkiv City. It was such an intense and terrible day, even for people that have been through hell so often there. And I just saw on X today, Luke Harding. He's a Guardian journalist who I've met a few times, and he's been very bravely covering the war from some hot spots here. And the Ukrainian publisher in Kharkiv that the Russians bombed yesterday published a copy of his book in Ukrainian. The book is called Invasion. And so he was very moved by this and said, that we can't allow, he said, don't let Russian fascism win. And, it's interesting reflection on, people think of some kind of objectivity in journalism, but for all the journalists I know here, no matter what respected outlet they come from, I mean, for the most part, with few exceptions, they say, if you're a journalist, you have to first believe in freedom of speech. You have to believe in freedom, because without freedom, there's no journalism. And so it is actually a natural thing for journalists to be partisans of freedom, or you become some kind of hypocrite. An AI chatbot can tell you the news of what's happened, but the journalists are the ones who choose and find the stories, and especially the stories and maybe the powerful people don't want to hear. And so you really see that here with the people that are willing to risk their lives in spots like that. And as I thought about that publishing house that was hit in Kharkiv, Ukrainians, so much, they've done so much to revive their culture these past several years. And so when something like that is so totally destroyed, all these books, burned or completely gone, it really hurts people. And this is an interesting way to look at how deeply the Russians have been attacking this country. There was a writer in Kharkiv region, Vladimir Vakulenko, and he, when the Russians occupied Kharkiv region the first time in 2022, he hid his manuscripts in his garden under the cherry tree. The Russians killed him during that occupation in 2022. Later, the Ukrainian writer Victoria Amelina, she found those manuscripts buried in the garden after the liberation of Kharkiv region. Then the Russians killed her months later when she was having dinner at a pizzeria in Kramatorsk. And then after her death, and she saved these manuscripts, Vivat Publishing House in Kharkiv, and Vivat means to live, Publishing House in Kharkiv published those manuscripts from the writer Vakulenko that were saved by Amelina, two dead writers. And that publishing house that preserved these manuscripts and published them yesterday was totally destroyed. And as another Ukrainian writer says, this is the 20th century all over again. The killers are the same. That's how you get used to everything. The main thing, though, is who you remain in all of this. And I think that's the chorus here. We see the same evils of the 20th century. Here you can see them playing out once again. And is it being stopped is the question.
Of course, here in the United States, as you know, Joseph, our thoughts and thanks are with our brave U.S. military heroes who gave their lives for our freedom, but we certainly will keep in mind all the Ukrainians who have done the same thing for freedom. And we'll connect with you, hopefully we'll be able to, on Tuesday, Joseph.
Thanks, Bob. Hey, quick, soldierfield10.com. Tomorrow, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, retired general, and Ukrainians who've lost limbs in battle will be running at Soldier Field tomorrow morning. So visit soldierfield10.com, and you can go and cheer them on and talk to some of these guys. They speak English.
That's something else. So we'll get that posted on our website, too, WGNradio.com. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?